Well, good morning, everybody. Oh, we can do better than that, can't we? I can. Come on. Good morning, everybody. It is great to be with you. As my mother often said when I was a child, hard work that is worth doing is what gives life meaning. And from the conversations we've been having and we are going to have today, it's a reminder that the hard work of helping make sure that the doors of opportunity are open for everyone in the United States is work that gives our lives meaning. It is hard work, and it is work worth doing. I'm so grateful, Ray, for your hosting us, but also for your passion, for your lifetime of active and purposeful and personal engagement in bringing not just the arts, not just a glorious and spirit-lifting place and community to our city, but for what you've been as an example, as a mentor, as a role model to just a whole, actually probably 2 generations now, of young Delawareans. Since we first met, you have long impressed me with your spirit, and thank you for hosting us today at the Christina Cultural Arts Center. Please, if you would, a round of applause to Ray Jones Avery. And to David and Lillian and Joanna and everybody at Prosperity Now, thank you for your work here in Wilmington to convene and to communicate with a strong community of folks who are deeply connected with our community and who have for a long time been working together on financial literacy, on savings, on access, and on economic justice ideas. Ways in which we can bridge federal policy work with the actual engagement and empowerment of our community are of real value and interest to us. So we thank you for coming to Delaware and for convening this conversation today, and for ways in which you're contributing to federal policy formation. To the folks who've joined us, thank you. We have a very long list of organizations, so perhaps you will forgive me if I don't list literally every single organization in the room, but instead say thank you all. Some of you have been at this for a lifetime. Some of you are newer to this work, but we are all grateful for the ways in which this journey is a collective journey for our entire community. And to Colleen, thank you for being with us today as you begin your journey in elected statewide public service and tackle the very real issue of financial literacy and savings in Delaware. We are blessed to have had really great leaders before you as state treasurer. My friend Jack Markell, my colleague Tom Carper, and I think you have a lot of opportunities here to dive in and to tackle ways in which we can strengthen the longstanding institutions of public education and engagement, but particularly around the deep racial inequalities in access to savings, in access to credit, and in access to opportunity. Some would have you believe that our economy is in the best shape it's ever been. And by a few indicators, it is. Unemployment is at the lowest level it's been in my adult lifetime. The equity markets are soaring. There are numbers I could cite that would tell you things are so great we shouldn't even be talking. But we all know the reality. We know that the day-to-day lived experience of far too many Americans and far too many Wilmingtonians is that although they may be fully employed in 1 or 2 or even 3 jobs, they're just not getting ahead. The savings that were wiped out by the financial services crash, the ways in which they are underpaid and overworked make it harder and harder, and that middle-class lifestyle where you can afford decent, safe, and sanitary housing, where you can save for your retirement, where you can provide for your parents, where you can hope to send your child to college and be able to afford it, is slipping further away from a larger number of our brothers and sisters in the United States. And Prosperity Now has done some detailed analysis that I know has been distributed that walks through some of the numbers of what that means. But it's important to remember how it feels and the way in which we have far too many folks here in Wilmington and up and down our state who see on the television and who hear from our leaders on Twitter and elsewhere that things are the best they've ever been, and yet their lived experience is profoundly different. We've got something like 2/3 of Black and Latino households right here in Wilmington who could not afford to replace a loss of income for 3 months. If they had a fire or a major automobile accident or, God forbid, a visit to the emergency room for them or a loved one, they wouldn't be able to make up that difference. They don't have so-called liquid assets or savings that they could get to quickly that could cover that. And in tight-knit communities, often the folks who might be calling upon you for that help is a pretty broad circle. It's not just your immediate spouse and kids. It's folks across a whole neighborhood or a whole network of connectivity. And the things that cause that abrupt drop, that financial challenge, are all too familiar to us and happen all too often. So the core reason I introduced the bill that I'm here to talk briefly about today, the Saving for the Future Act, with Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester of Delaware, and a number of other senators. Senator Amy Klobuchar, who's running for some other job you might have heard of, she's from Minnesota, were kind enough to lend their names to it. Simply put, it is a bill to help families build financial security and prepare for retirement through employer-led workplace savings. What's that mean? It means if you're working, you should be saving for retirement. We're used to the idea that there's a minimum wage. Below that, it's not legal for you to be employing people full-time. We're used to the idea that there is in Social Security a federally defined program that everyone who works pays into, everyone gets to benefit from it. But this recognizes that Social Security is no longer enough, and that we have tens of millions of Americans with no meaningful savings for retirement. This essentially says that if you're working, your employer should contribute 50 cents per hour worked into a savings plan, and you should contribute to it as well. And the way it's structured, it's designed mostly for folks who don't currently have access to a savings program or a savings plan through their employer. So while you're working, while you're raising your family, if you're a nurse or a nurse's assistant, if you're a truck driver, if you're a bank teller, you should be contributing a modest amount towards your savings beginning at the very start of your work life. And for way too many Americans, that's just not the case. And by making this particularly accessible to folks who are working hourly wage, who are not salary, and who work for different employers over the course of their lifetime, and making that easier, making the savings account individual, portable, and accessible at key times in your life, that addresses the racial disparity in savings, because it is exactly the lower wage, lower income, lower economic security workers who would benefit the most from this idea. So most large companies, your DuPonts and your AstraZenecas, they already have an established 401k plan that they're making contributions into. This wouldn't force those employers to do anything new. Other employers would simply have to select a retirement plan out of the ones currently available, but where they're not making it available or not making that effort. I've heard concerns from nonprofit employers and from smaller businesses about how would we, as an employer, possibly afford this. So for those with fewer than 100 workers, they would have the option. Forgive me, there's two things here, let me not confuse them. One of the other questions is, I don't want to put money into a savings account that I can't touch for 40 or 50 years, because those unexpected short-term problems, the auto accident, the visit to the hospital, that's going to really be the issue that I'm concerned about, not savings for decades from now. The structure of this says for those who have fewer than 100 workers, they have the option of paying into UP accounts that are federally provided accounts that charge low fees and can easily be transferred from job to job. That makes it easier for smaller employers who want to but don't currently provide retirement savings to do so. This also provides a generous tax credit to help businesses of all sizes, but mostly smaller ones, to cover half the required contributions for any employer's first 15 workers, even those that already provide a retirement benefit. The goal here is to get 50 cents an hour into the pockets of everyone who is working and who doesn't currently have access to a retirement savings account. The first $2,500 in those savings contributions goes into an easy-to-access portable individual UP savings account. And that gives you a pot of money for when the car breaks down or when the neighbor's house burns and you offer to help them out. It's got very few limitations in terms of your ability to access it. Once that $2,500 is filled up, it spills over into the second bucket, which goes towards retirement. And it's invested on a very large pooled basis into long-term diversified investment vehicles. So everyone can share in the benefit of economic growth. You have limited options in terms of Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, or Plan D. You individually would not be going into the market and picking stocks, but neither would politicians be able to go into this fund and take it for other federal programs. It would be a new ground rule for our economy. We have an expectation in our economy that children don't work, that we don't have child labor in this country, that folks who do work have minimum safety provisions, that you pay into workers' compensation. So if you get injured on the job, you'll have the benefit of being able to access medical treatment. Why shouldn't we have employer-provided savings accounts that make saving for the future automatic, affordable, flexible, and individual. I just want to thank Prosperity Now and the AARP, the National Urban League, and the SEIU, who are among a number of organizations that have come out publicly and supported it. My hope is that the organizations present here will support it as well. We'll take a hard look at it. We'll tell me what questions you have about it and whether you think this contributes or not. Prosperity Now is working across a dozen different communities like ours around the country. And one of the good news things, I think, and you'll see this in their federal action packet that was handed out, is that there's a number of other bipartisan policy proposals. There's one guy running for president, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, who seems to appear across more of these than anybody else, which is a great legacy of his having been mayor of Newark and understanding these issues and being an engaged legislator. My hope is that we'll all have a chance to talk to one of the, I don't know, is it 24 now, candidates for president. I certainly have one in mind who I'm intending to talk to, my friend and predecessor, and obviously Senator Klobuchar, who's a candidate, is a co-sponsor of this particular bill. Let me simply say that this is the kind of thing that I think can make a real difference, and that at the end of the day can move us forward as a country. I know I'm speaking I'm literally preaching to the choir. I'm speaking to an audience of folks who have dedicated years or decades of their lives, from Rashmi, who's launched Stepping Stones, the community credit union that has helped so many get access to banking services who didn't before, to LACC and Kingswood, to the Delaware Homeless Veterans Program. All of you in different ways are doing different things to try and help build economic opportunity and sustainability going forward. I just wanted to pitch this one pebble into your pond and say thank you for listening and thank you for the opportunity to explain to you the basics of what is a somewhat complex bill. David Brown is here today. He's come up from my Washington office. He's new to my staff, but he's helped craft this. David, why don't you wave to the folks if you would? Thank you. If you've got specific or detailed questions, I encourage you to talk with David. Feel free to talk with me or my state director, Jim Paoli. We'll be here for a while. I also want to introduce Cleo. Cleo, could you say hi to everybody for a second? Who is a new member of my constituent services team. She comes over. She is a Marine Corps veteran and someone who's done a lot of work at the State Department of Labor and really helps connect people to the services in my office. Let me make sure I don't yield the stage without saying this. If you have anyone, and everybody has someone, who is having a challenge or an issue with Medicare, with Medicaid, with immigration, with veterans benefits, with the IRS, call me. This is what we do for a living. I have 5 full-time people who do nothing but help handle cases. That is probably the most important thing we do. Cleo has just joined that team. Krista Brady leads that team. Krista's here, hiding back there with Tyler Rivera. Ladies and gentlemen, sorry, I have a very large speaker between me, Krista Brady, and Tyler Rivera. So if you get nothing else out of my comments today, there's some new bill in Washington. Yeah, that's great. Krista Brady, Tyler Rivera, make sure you leave with their names and cards and with Cleo's as well, because we've got a great constituent services team. I'm grateful to Lisa Blunt Rochester for being an early co-sponsor of this bill. I'm grateful to my senior senator, Tom Carper, who is tirelessly interested in savings and economic opportunity for our state. But I'm more grateful than any for Colleen, who has joined us as a statewide elected official, whose personal experience and whose professional experience gives her the tools and the strength and the grounding to make healthcare accessible and affordable and to make savings accessible and affordable. Ladies and gentlemen, our new state treasurer, Colleen Davis.